Now, South Africa's fourth census since the dawn of democracy officially gets underway today. And for the first time, it includes a digital option for people to complete the questionnaire online. A census night took place last night where homeless people were among those who were tallied in some places. Now, the census will run until the end of this month. And it seeks to get a better understanding of the population in South Africa and is used as a tool to assist government in planning. Now, over 160,000 field workers will be deployed across the country for the 2022 census. And the closing date for registration is this Saturday. So for more on this, we're joined by South Africa's Statistician General, Risenga Maluleke. Mr. Maluleke, good to have you with us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, and again, good morning to the viewers at home.
Mr. Maluleke, census, let's just start with a brief overview just to bring it home, to bring a better understanding to those who still are not aware as to why this is happening and why it is important to participate in it.
A census is the counting of a nation, or the biggest mobilization of a nation during peace times, and indeed it focuses on assisting us to know where people in a particular nation, and in this case, South Africa, where people in South Africa live and play. This information will help government for purposes of planning, long-term planning, as well as people in business and those who seek to go into business to have information about particular neighborhoods. And indeed, if you want to look at schools in the future, clinics, and where there is a lack of reticulation for water, these are kinds of issues that you look at when you look at census data. And if I'm a business person who wants to start a business in a particular neighborhood or wants to see an area where those customers will be coming from, that's where I look at.
So, Mr. Maluleke, this particular census for the year 2022, taking place against a very strenuous backdrop of not just a pandemic, which may see people a bit apprehensive about allowing people into their homes, into their spaces, but also given the crime wave that the country is currently facing. And I've seen people already ask the question, why would I want to allow anybody into my home? And even if it's online, how do I know and trust that this is actually legit? So can we address those concerns, please?
Firstly, is that this year's census is a digital census, in that we have three modes of collection. The first mode of collection is where we will have field workers presenting themselves before households. And indeed, when they present themselves, they will have an identification card that will be carrying or bearing their name and, of course, colors similar to the one that I'm wearing, a green color. And where members of the public do doubt that this is a person who is appearing before me and working for Statistician, they can call our 0800 number 110248. And this is a toll-free number, 0800 110248, where our call center will assist them by them indicating in what neighborhood they are, and then they will assist them with identification, or they can log on their phone into a Statistician website indicating their locality and be able to see the person presenting themselves. That is one part. We have also recruited our enumerators or our field workers from neighborhoods. So we recruit people from where they come. And in this regard, where we don't have enough people, we try and recruit them from neighboring communities. And as in the case of villages and indeed townships and informal settlements, the likelihood of them knowing one another is very high. But in the event they don't, we encourage our field workers to also go to the civic leaders, community leaders, traditional leaders, as well as in some cases reaching out to the nearest police station and indicating that they are going to count our people. This is where our field workers appear in person. But we also have two other modes that our field workers or indeed members of the public can be enumerated remotely. And in these ones, we require that members of the public register. Where they register, they can choose an option of filling the form themselves, or they can be called by our field workers on telephone. And this is where we had wanted to close by end of January, but when we realized the numbers were low, we opened and until the 5th of February on Saturday. So I would like to call upon members of the public to register to be enumerated or to be counted remotely, which would minimize contact between themselves and field workers.
So with regard to the low numbers that you've just spoken about of people actually registering, how much of a concern is that for you, Mr. Maluleke? Because, again, you outlined for us why this is important for planning purposes going forward, so that not just your local government but national government can actually make sure that they budget and that the correct allocations are made to each municipality, each province, etc. But is there enough done in order to ensure that people actually understand the importance of being counted?
Firstly, is that the count is not only about government and business people being able to plan. It is also about members of the public who will know what they have in their neighborhood, what kind of housing, how far are they from water facilities in terms of taps. Is there a tap in the house, in the yard, or a communal one, how far they are from such a tap of water. And in this regard, the census helps members of the public to engage with government and hold those that they elect accountable. So I would like to encourage members of the public out there and everyone who finds themselves within the borders of South Africa, and I want to repeat this point, everyone who finds themselves within the borders of South Africa, regardless of their legal standing, to avail themselves to be counted, because when they are in the country, they use resources and they access services. We do and are advertising widely in different platforms, media houses like yourselves, on Facebook, on Twitter, and even in print media and billboards, that members of the public should register themselves to be counted. Of course, when members of the public have not registered to be counted remotely, we will have our field workers presenting themselves before the households. And I must admit, registration is free of charge because it's a bill back to Stats SA. And so we want to count everyone who finds themselves within the borders of South Africa.
And I think that's such a critical point, as you said, irrespective of, whether you are here documented, undocumented, but you should be counted. So let's talk about the sort of questions that you would be posing in this particular round of census. What sort of things are you looking to gauge?
We want to know the name of a person that we are interviewing. So in every household, we don't need to interview or talk to everyone. Whoever we find at home who has information. So when members of the public do register to enumerate themselves, or they want our field workers to talk to them on the phone, they should have someone in a household who has all the information about that household. But where our field workers present themselves in a household, we need to have someone who will respond to everyone. Questions that we ask is the names of everyone in that household, their date of birth, and indeed we also want to talk about issues of how far they are from a facility like a tap, in terms of it being in the yard, being a communal one, or in a dwelling unit. We also want to know, in terms of mothers, the number of live births born in her lifetime for purposes of estimating fertility, which helps us to plan in the future how many children our nation may expect. We will talk about whether they work, indeed if they work, their earning bands, how much they work. Let me mention that all this information that we will be asking is confidential. It goes to Stats SA and it's not shared with anybody outside Stats SA, and it's done for purposes of statistical operations. We have also spoken to the information regulator about the POPIA Act, and we indeed comply with the POPIA Act as we have always complied throughout time. And indeed, members of the public, we have a lot of sample surveys other than the census. We have had a lot of cooperation out there. We have a well-standing and well-established relationship, and we would like to ride on that we encourage everyone to stand up and be counted. Having said so, let me also mention that there may be people who may want to refuse to be counted. Of course, the Statistics Act encourages us to take them to court where they are liable for a fine for up to 10,000 rands or up to 6 months imprisonment. But our relationship with members of the public has never led us there. Besides, when we have everyone answering questions in courts or languishing in prison, who will we count? We will have nobody to count. So we want everyone to stand up out there and get counted.
So just with regard to the POPIA Act, and you say that you are aware of that, the prescripts of that, and you abide by it. But just in layman's terms, if you could, Mr. Maluleke, just explain to our viewers how exactly you will protect their personal information.
Firstly is that, and this is a historic issue with us as Stats SA, one of the things is when you process information in terms of the POPIA Act, you need to make sure that you also do not share it with anybody. It's solely for purposes of what you are collecting it. And indeed, members of the public do have a right to change that information. In our case, and as we have demonstrated to the information regulator, is that every information that we collect is a snapshot. Maybe a census is a long-standing one because when we collect now, we will collect again in 10 years. But let us look at our monthly collections or our quarterly collections like the quarterly labor force survey. When collected, it gives us a result of that quarter. So we can't have it changed during after that quarter because we will come back and collect in the next quarter. So when there are changes to members of the public's information, they stand the right to change it in the next quarter, because if we change it, it would give a wrong picture of what we collected in that quarter, because it is a snapshot of what we collect at a particular quarter. And in this regard, we are saying that on confidentiality, we have always kept information that we collect from members of the public. Just a good example, we collect information from different sources, even on business entities. But once it reaches Stats SA, it never leaves Stats SA.
This is a quick one from JC, who says, Sakina, please tell Stats SA that their website does not work. I've registered, but I'm still waiting for my reference number and need this to log back in. So perhaps one, Mr. Maluleke, just to look into there with regard to the website. That's from one of our viewers. And one of the other questions I've seen, and I haven't seen the questionnaire, but people were raising concern about the question about gender and asking about the provision for non-binary, those who identify as non-binary. Is that something that you've been made aware of, Mr. Maluleke?
Let me start with the question, Sakina, to the member of the public who says they are registering and they are struggling. We have had such cases, and our toll-free number at 0800 110 248, where our call center agents will assist such a member of the public. And indeed, not only that, any other problem relating to the census, we encourage members of the public to call that toll-free number so that we can be aware, as we are aware that this is a mammoth task, and indeed whatever information or issues that members of the public are experiencing that are brought to our attention, we have to resolve quite speedily. In relation to members of the society, especially those that are in the LGBTQI, indeed, who indicate that they would like to be enumerated and have an option of indicating their gender. We are not asking the gender question in this census. We are asking the sex question, which is male and female in relation and in line with the United Nations guidelines, and we are a signatory as South Africa. Of course, it has been brought to our attention that it would have been great to expand this further. We are aware that the nation, our department, our colleagues at Department of Home Affairs have been engaging with members of the society. And indeed, not only that, internationally in Brussels, there has been a meeting, and another meeting will occur again in May here in the country. And we will be part of those meetings for purposes of refining our tools so that in future we can ask the gender question. The sex question deals with male and female, and that's what we are asking in this census. But of course, the next census is in 10 years. We have sample surveys, and we will, once this matter has been discussed and there's found resonance in the country and even amongst the statutes of the country, to make sure that we include it going forward.
Mr. Maluleke, we have to leave it there. But just a quick one. How did it go last night? Because, of course, the field workers went out last night and it already started. So just a quick one on how it went.
Well, I was in the field. I've just come home at about 4:30 this morning. We were out enumerating the homeless. As I said, we reach out to households, but we also reach out to homeless people and people in special dwelling, as in children in hospitals, barracks, as well as other forms of special dwelling units. It was quite interesting in terms of the homeless across the whole country. We were able to reach out to many of them. In terms of special dwelling units, there are still areas where we still need to talk to neighborhood leadership, but we were in different hospitals in the country, and it has kicked off well. We will still continue enumerating them throughout today, because these are people that if you don't get them where they are, you are not able to get them anywhere else. And let me mention that the census has kicked off as of today and concludes on the 28th of March with mop-up 28th of February with mop-up operations that will follow. So let me encourage everyone to stand up and get counted.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maluleke. And that was the Statistician General, Risenga Maluleke, talking to us about Census 2022.